Hi, so today I'd like to talk a little bit about assessments. In the field of education, assessments are so important. Teachers, administrators, parents all want to know whether the students are learning as much as they should. There are two main types of assessments. There are formative assessments and summative assessments. Formative assessments are just small checks along the way that let teachers know whether their students have grasped the information. The formative assessments can tell the teachers whether they should move on if the students have grasped the material, or whether they're going to need to review the material a little bit more before moving on because they don't want to add new material if the students are completely lost. The summative assessments are done a lot further apart. They would be the unit tests or a test at the end of a quarter, a semester, or perhaps even the school year. These are going to let the teachers and the administrators know how much of the material the students actually retained. There are also the standardized tests, and the standardized tests are usually done in the spring, and these will show how much their students have learned throughout the year and whether the students are at a level that they should be for their grade. I would like to focus on these standardized tests. I read an article about value-added assessments, which seem to be the standardized tests taken in the spring, usually, and the article suggested that they were a little biased and sometimes inconsistent. For the bias, it suggested that for socioeconomics, it didn't necessarily relate well for those with the low socioeconomic status. It related how there were three main places where students learn. It's not just the school, they also learn in their homes and in their communities. The article suggested that since those with low socioeconomics, they may not necessarily have all the same opportunities in the summer as other students. In their home and their community, they might not be introduced to different learning experiences, different ways to use what they've learned during the school year. So their summer loss is a lot more extensive than those with those better learning opportunities in the summer. So the test related that the bias between the socioeconomics was very prevalent in these tests. The second thing it said was that these tests were inconsistent. This came from the test format mostly. Like if the schools gave a different test, then the results would be completely different. So a different format would completely change the results. One test would show that they learned a lot, and the other test showed that the students didn't learn very much, but it was just based on the questions asked or the way the test was formatted. So because these tests were biased and inconsistent, this article suggested that instead of simply testing in the spring semesters, to be fair, schools should test in the fall near the beginning and then in the spring near the end. The article suggested that this would help with the bias and the summer loss that is connected with that. So if the schools can show where the students were at in the beginning, not related to where they were at the end of the last school year, where they were at in the beginning of this school year, then where they got to in the end, then the correlation there would be a lot clearer than just from the end of last school year to the end of this school year in relation to the summer loss. One thing to keep in mind is that the field of education is not set in stone. It is constantly changing. The standards change, technology changes. The best methods to teach students change constantly as people research and find how people learn. So the way that people assess now may not be as effective, and that is what this article is presenting. It's demonstrating a new way to assess students and their yearly progress, and it's just suggesting that maybe the current method for standardized tests is not necessarily the best way to see the yearly progress in a school. And that's just the way it is about education, is that things can constantly change as we find new ways of doing things that is hopefully better than the last method, and so that we can reach our students better.